Good morning. Welcome to Wellbeing Wednesday. I'm Jim McIntyre, and it's good to be back with you. Last week, we talked about some potential indications that you would benefit from seeking professional help. And this week, I want to continue talking about getting help. I want to talk about some potential avenues of help that are available in Australia and what engaging with those might look like. So in Australia, people engaging in therapy, they could be consulting a psychotherapist, a psychoanalyst, a family therapist, a counsellor, mental health social worker, occupational therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, or some other form of that. And it's confusing because they may all be doing a form of talk therapy, but it can look really different. It would take ages to talk about what each of those is. So instead, I want to really briefly talk about the three most common, which I think are three that people sometimes get confused and don't really know the difference between them. So those three are psychologist, psychiatrist, and a counsellor. So both psychologists and counsellors are trained practitioners who collaborate with an individual to support their well-being. Generally, that will entail a format where a therapist uses talk therapy to connect with the client in a collaborative mutual relationship, discuss and explore the client's past and present challenges, emotions, relationships, and beliefs, support their transformation and empowerment to improve their capacity to manage their lives and heal from any psychological distress they've experienced, and to identify goals, barriers to those goals, and collaboratively work towards those goals. So in addition to talk-based therapy, psychologists and counselors might use other evidence-based techniques to support clients, such as art, music, dance, and movement therapies. So there's some similarities between psychologists and counselors, but there's a couple of key differences. The first is that a psychologist can diagnose. A counsellor will typically have a tentative diagnosis in mind, but they can't actually offer a professional diagnosis. Secondly, a psychologist is often for more long-term therapy, while a counsellor will typically focus on one particular issue for a time. The third is that the training process is different, and the amount of training may differ. A psychiatrist, on the other hand, is a medical doctor. Psychiatrists attend medical school and become medical doctors before doing specialist training in mental health. Because they're doctors, psychiatrists understand the link between mental health and physical health. They also can diagnose and prescribe medications. So if you're not sure who you should see, seeing your GP is a really good first step. And there's a few reasons for this. Firstly, if you wanted to see a psychiatrist, that most often requires a referral. So it's likely not actually an option without seeing a GP. Secondly, your GP has training in talking about these mental health issues and likely has a network of potential referrals. They also likely would know potentially what might be a good referral for your circumstances. The third reason is that sometimes there's a medical element at play when it comes to mental health issues. Sometimes there isn't. But when something goes wrong with our physical health, it's helpful to know what it is. And sometimes that process of discovering what it is requires discovering what it isn't. And maybe you're experiencing depression purely as a mental health issue, but potentially there can be hormonal or health factors going on, and it can be helpful to rule those out. The fourth reason why seeing a GP is a really good first step is the mental health treatment plan. So one of the wonderful things about living in Australia is that a GP can put you on a mental health treatment plan, which will give you access to either free or subsidized care for a period of time from a mental health professional. Another option in obtaining professional help is contacting. Another option for obtaining professional help with your mental health is contacting a counsellor or a psychologist directly. You can definitely Google and find counsellors or psychologists But the best plan, if you want to go this route, is finding a referral from someone that you know. There's so many forms and models of talk therapy that it can be really overwhelming if you go looking online, because most people are unlikely to know what the difference is between CBT, ACT, EFT, narrative therapy, or any of the others, let alone know what is going to be best for their particular mental health issue. It's often more useful to find someone who is a good fit than looking for someone who does a particular type of therapy, unless you know that that's specifically what you're after. Most therapists use a blend of models and have a few in their toolkit that they can pull out depending on what the needs of the client is. Many psychiatrists and psychologists have pretty big waiting lists at the moment, which is something to be aware of and can be an advantage of going for a private counsellor. So, a viable strategy at the moment can definitely be seeing your GP, getting a referral, and then getting on a waiting list and seeing a counsellor in the short term. Then, if that's working out brilliantly and really helping you, you might not even need to see the psychologist or psychiatrist, but otherwise, it might just help things not deteriorate if it is like an urgent mental health need. That can sometimes be a good strategy. So, if you're a young person under the age of 25, there's a really fantastic service that we highly recommend, which is Headspace. They are a service that offer free counseling for young people, and they are fantastic. Very worth checking out. I think they do in person and also face the screen or telehealth. I also just want to say not every therapist is going to be the right fit for you, and that is totally okay. Katherine likes to say that finding the right therapist is a bit like finding the right hairdresser. They're not all going to be the right fit. Sometimes it's helpful to have a referral from a friend and to check it out and try someone. It took me a long time to find a hairdresser I like, and I obviously have not been able to see them for a while. But I want to talk next time about having your first session with a therapist and what that might look like. But there's one other avenue of help I want to talk about this morning, which you may have seen us talking about in the comment sections of these videos. But both Lifeline and Beyond Blue can be really great sources of short-term support if you need to speak to someone about your mental health. And both have messaging services available if you don't want to talk on the phone because of anxiety or circumstances. My understanding is that these aren't talk therapy and they're not long-term solutions. But if you need to talk to someone urgently because you're having a mental health crisis or just having a really low moment, these can be really fantastic, free, and very accessible services. There's a lot of other services out there and available. I know Black Dog Institute are really helpful when it comes to depression. I know there is a website called betterhelp.com that has a whole lot of therapists that you can really easily get booked in with. There's lots of different services available. So what do we do? As we've mentioned previously, we're landing these videos in our what do we do? And we've talked about some options when it comes to seeking professional help. If you're regularly interacting with people who are in crisis or simply need mental health assistance, it can be really useful to know what services are available, especially services in your area that you can refer to. Katherine and I have a list of counsellors that we trust at different price points. That's not going to be a list that everyone needs, but that's helped us with the people that we interact with. So the what do we do this week is pretty simple. It's know that there is help available for you or others. If you're dealing with a mental health issue, you don't need to live with that issue. There's help and freedom available. You don't need to live with anxiety. You don't need to live with depression. There are services and help available to get healing and step into freedom. I'm going to talk next video about what a first session with a therapist might be like and what's helpful to know in going into that first session. If you have questions about that, about what I've talked about today or what we've talked about at any point, or just questions generally about mental health, things that you'd like to know more about, please send those questions in because we'd love to set a video aside to tackle some of your questions. So you can either send them in via the comment section or you can email me at jimmcintyre@live.com.au. Thank you so much for joining us, and we've really appreciated all the positive feedback that we've been receiving. People have been finding these videos helpful, and it's helpful for us knowing that people are finding them helpful. So thank you for the people who are commenting and sharing, and we look forward to talking to you next week.